The experience of ego disintegration often arrives uninvited, cloaked in the garments of despair, confusion, or a sudden loss of identity. It feels as though the scaffolding upon which the personality was constructed begins to crumble, and one finds oneself in a space of psychological nakedness. This stage, though deeply uncomfortable, is not pathological in nature. It is rather a necessary dismantling, a sacred unraveling. What is breaking down is not the self, but the mask, the persona, the accumulated layers of adaptation that have served their purpose but can no longer carry the weight of a soul that seeks transformation. The ego, in its effort to maintain control, resists this dissolution. It clings to former certainties, roles, and ideas of who one is supposed to be. But the psyche, governed by a deeper intelligence, knows when a greater unfolding is due. At this point, old ambitions may lose their taste, relationships may feel hollow, and the future may seem like an empty road. Yet within this psychic emptiness lies a hidden gestation. Like the seed buried in darkness before it sprouts, the individual must pass through this state of not knowing. The suffering here is not meaningless. It is the psychic labor of rebirth. Those undergoing this phase may feel lost, as if drifting without compass or star, but in truth, they are being initiated. They are being pulled into a deeper current of life, one that does not originate from the surface mind. The dissolution of the ego's dominance allows the unconscious to speak, to rise, to participate in the shaping of life anew. This is not regression. It is descent, and from this descent, there arises the possibility of becoming whole, of entering a stage of life that is not merely functional but authentically lived. The emergence of the shadow marks a pivotal turning point in the inner journey, for it signals that the unconscious no longer consents to be ignored. What rises now are the hidden fragments of the personality, traits denied, desires suppressed, emotions cast into the darkness of the self. They appear not to destroy, but to demand recognition. When one begins to see one's own envy, aggression, arrogance, or neediness, qualities long projected onto others, this confrontation is not a moral failure, but a psychological necessity. It is the soul reclaiming its exiled parts. Often, this process begins subtly. Irritations grow sharper, dreams grow stranger, and interactions with others provoke disproportionate emotional responses. These are not random fluctuations, but symptoms of a deeper psychic process underway. The shadow does not present itself as theory. It arrives as discomfort, as contradiction, as that which does not fit the image we have constructed of ourselves. Its arrival is rarely welcomed, for it disrupts the harmony of the persona, the social mask designed for approval and survival. Yet this disruption is the beginning of authenticity. To meet the shadow is to stand before the mirror and finally see what has long been hidden behind it. This meeting may provoke shame, fear, or resistance. But if one can bear to stay with it without judgment or evasion, then something changes. The psyche becomes more whole, less divided. What emerges is not just self-awareness, but psychic energy. The aspects of ourselves that we deny also contain life force, creativity, power, emotional depth. When these are reintegrated, the individual becomes fuller, more complex, more real. Life begins to feel less performative and more inhabited. To encounter the shadow, then, is not to descend into darkness, but to illuminate it. It is to prepare the ground for a life that is not only better, but more truly one's own. There are moments in life when external events seem to reflect the inner state with uncanny precision. These are not coincidences in the ordinary sense, but what the psyche experiences as meaningful alignments, synchronicities. They occur when the boundary between the inner world and outer reality becomes porous, and something mysterious begins to speak through the fabric of ordinary events. It may be the sudden appearance of a symbol that has haunted your dreams, a chance meeting with someone who speaks to your inner crisis without knowing it, or a repeated motif that seems to echo your unspoken questions. These experiences bypass logic and speak directly to the soul, leaving one with a quiet certainty that something larger is at work. Synchronicities do not obey cause and effect. They belong to the realm of meaning, not mechanism. They emerge when the psyche is in a state of transition, particularly during times of crisis, uncertainty, or deep questioning. In these moments, the unconscious becomes active and seeks expression through symbols and outer events. What appears as chance is, in truth, a dialogue between the self and the world. These events are invitations, not answers, but signs that one is aligning with a deeper pattern of life that cannot be seen in advance, only lived into. Often, people dismiss these experiences as imagination or coincidence, yet they linger in the memory with a strange weight. They insist on being noticed. The psyche recognizes them not with the intellect, but with a felt sense of significance. When these moments begin to cluster, it is not mere anomaly. It is a sign that the inner world is being mirrored outwardly, that life is preparing to shift. The presence of synchronicity suggests that the unconscious is no longer passive, but is guiding, shaping, and even collaborating in the emergence of a new path. There comes a moment in a person's development when the familiar goals and societal expectations no longer satisfy the deeper yearnings of the soul. It is not that the external world has failed, but that it no longer contains what one truly seeks. A quiet but persistent voice begins to rise from within, a call not toward success or approval, but toward wholeness. This is not a desire invented by the ego, but an impulse that emerges from the depths of the unconscious, from the self, which seeks expression through the individual. At first, this call may be unsettling, for it disrupts the structures of a life built on adaptation. It questions roles, relationships, and routines. It often isolates because few understand why a seemingly well-functioning life must now be dismantled. What awakens here is the urge to individuate, to become who one truly is beyond imitation or conformity. The person may feel an overwhelming need to withdraw, to reflect, to explore forgotten interests or unresolved wounds. There is a gravitational pull toward authenticity, even if it means entering uncertainty. This process is not guided by external maps. It is navigated through inner symbols, dreams, and the felt sense of what resonates. To heed this call is to risk the security of the known, but to ignore it is to risk stagnation of the soul. The path toward wholeness is not linear. It requires endurance, humility, and the willingness to live without guarantees. But those who follow it often find that life becomes more vivid, more meaningful, even in its difficulties. The fragmentation of the old self is not a breakdown, but a preparation. The discontent, the longing, the search for something more. These are signs that the soul is moving toward a stage of life where the individual can live not from adaptation but from essence.